Hey everybody, it's Ian the Off Kilter Crafter.
And I'm Sewbecca. And so you want to know what? I got a spoiler alert.
What's that?
This is a buttload of quilts over here.
First of all, my room does get messy. Don't judge me. But this is why I told Ian I have a buttload of quilts, because see, this is my pile of quilts. There's my booty. It's a buttload.
It sure is. I mean, it's hard to believe that pile over there are quilts. Like,
Yeah,
it truly is
Yeah.
a buttload because it literally reaches your butt.
that's right. We have had a lot of fun with Pro Stitcher on the long arm, and I decided instead of just bringing one quilt today, I was going to bring a buttload. And so I've got a ton of quilts over here now.
Yeah.
There are a couple in there that were quilted previously,
Right.
but Akumu, my little Shih Tzu puppy, loves to eat fabric. I don't know, like quilter's worst enemy. But he likes to eat fabric. And so there were a couple of quilts that he had started nibbling on the edges of. It looked like a moth had gotten to it, but it was my dog. And so I re-squared up those quilts and I used your serger to serge them down. And I have to rebind those. So 2 in this pile are actually previously quilted, but everything else is from the Pro Stitcher.
And that's just your quilts too.
Yeah.
Like, add on to mine and it would probably be as tall as you are.
Like hashtag finish more quilts. Hashtag finish more quilts. I literally wished I would have pulled the trigger on Pro Stitcher years ago, but I was so shocked by the price. The whole setup was like the price of a car. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Not for just a hobby. But now it's a little bit different. You know what I mean? Because I kind of broke it out. Everything's fine. So where I am right now in my quilting journey is I'm looking at my quilt rack. You can look at my rack too, if you would like. My quilt rack has one unfinished or unquilted quilt top on it. And then I do have a panel, like a large panel that doesn't need anything. It's the size of a regular quilt that I was just going to have fun with. And then I've got a couple of mini quilts and then I have nothing else. So I need to get to piecing, which I'm really excited about because this is Small Business Saturday after Thanksgiving. We did our annual shop hop with Mary and I picked up some fabric that actually inspired me and I can't wait to start working with it. So I'm really excited.
It's going to be really cool. And this is the first time that I've known you to not have a rack full of quilt tops ready to go. Like,
I'm out.
You are pretty much out at this point.
Yeah. And the one that's over there that I'm looking at, it's the Atomic Starburst that I did with a white fabric. And I used the Dust to Dawn fabric from Monique Jacobs from Open Gate Quilts. It is one of my favorite fabric lines. I have a jelly roll of that left over, and that's it. I am waiting until I feel proficient enough to tackle that one because I have big dreams for that quilt, and I want to make sure that what I am able to do on the long arm is able to live up to what's in my head for that quilt. I'm not intimidated by it. It's just not yet. So the day I pull that off and quilt it is going to be a very big day for me. So
an exciting day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yes, you're right. We did participate in Small Business Saturday. We
did.
All 3 of us wore matching shirts. That's why you see us wearing.
Oh,
I know.
Remembered we're still wearing the matching shirts.
Wearing matching shirts today. So Mary, you and I all wore matching shirts.
That's right.
That she bought for us on her way up here
from Buc-ee's in South Carolina.
Yep. And
Carolina, not Carolina.
And so we wore those out on Small Business Saturday. Had a great time. I'm sure you'll hear all about that adventure on our YouTube channels because I know I'm talking about it tomorrow on my live stream a little bit. But so Small Business Saturday was a success for us.
It was.
And we had a great time. Yeah,
it was great. I'll just share one memory of the whole day that I think was fun. Kathy from Scrappy Apple made my day. She was just a lot of fun. She was a lot of fun to play around with. So we went into the shop and at Scrappy Apple was our first stop. And I was just kind of subdued, looking around. Didn't really find anything that was inspiring me, but I did pick up a couple of stocking stuffers for Ian and Mary. And I was going to the counter to check out And then after I checked out, there was a panel that they had hanging up behind the register that I just absolutely had to have because I kept looking at it. And I ended up buying some fabric, and as one of the ladies that was there working, her name is Kathy, was cutting, she was like, "Do you have a YouTube channel?" I was like, "I do." And she goes, Is it Sew Becca?" And I was like, "It is." And she goes, she got really excited. But then we just kind of had this rapport. We were joking back and forth the entire time. So she was a lot of fun. So hi, Kathy. Hi, Kelly.
Kathy and Kelly from Scrappy Apple in Winchester,
Virginia.
So much fun. Had a great time there.
Absolutely.
So go check them out. If you haven't already been to their store, make sure to check it out because it is one of my favorites.
A little shop.
It is.
But it's a little shop.
It is.
It's a lot of fun.
But it's also the personalities.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The personalities make it for me because that store doesn't have a lot of fabric that I would normally pick. But I still want to go there because I enjoy seeing Kelly and I enjoy being able to, visit and say hello.
Which, by the way, Scrappy Apple is like a night and day different from the second stop that we took, which was Patchwork Plus, which had everything. So we'll put a bow on this. We went to Scrappy Apple, Patchwork Plus, and then down to Sew Classic Fabrics. That's our usual small business Saturday run. So we did those 3 and then came back.
Talking about quilts, let's talk about the quilts that we have on our laps today.
Sure. I've done all the talking. You go first.
Okay. All right. Cool. So I have the Tree of Life Puzzle Mystery Quilt from Cotton Cuts. This is the colorway Radiance. I finished it. This is one of the first ones that I piece quilted, bound like all the way through by myself. And it turned out so great. I love the quilting pattern in this one. I've used this pattern a lot. You've noticed
you have
me using it a lot.
What is it? Abacus?
Abacus?
Abacus.
Yeah.
From Urban Elements.
Yes. And
that's the panto.
I love it because it really helps. You don't get a lot of pleats.
That's right.
Ripples into it because the way that the quilting pattern goes out or the way it stitches out, it kind of helps alleviate some of those pain points and helps keep
that is a really good panto. If you want something that you can always make the panto bigger if you don't want as much quilting. But one of the things that I'm learning is there are some pantos that are really good if a quilt top is a little full or needs a little bit more forgiveness, and this is definitely a panto that I feel like does that well. And then the outcome is it ends up looking very flat.
Yes.
And it appears to be square-ish. So love the panto.
Love this one. And I have to give you credit for the thread choice because I was having difficulty picking the thread choice on this one. And you're like, I think
you should choose that salmon.
Yeah, I think that salmon might work. And sure enough, it works beautifully across all the colors that are in this one. Really, I don't know why I just slapped my knee, but there you go. It's a fun quilt. I really like it. I added the extra borders that Cotton Cut sent me. Normally I like to make my own borders for the puzzle mystery quilts.
You didn't have time with this one.
I didn't have time with this one. So I had to use the borders that were in the package, which is perfectly fine. And I think it really made this quilt because originally when I was piecing this quilt, this is Juicy Juice Deco Glow 2 fabric.
That's right.
I love Juicy Juice fabric. So I immediately was drawn to this colorway when I saw it on the color sheet. But as I started putting it together, the individual clues, there was a lot of orange and yellows. And I did not know if I was going to like that. And thankfully, the borders that they put in the package were this green, which really helped.
Well, it was the green and the yellow.
It was the green and the yellow. Yeah.
Right. Because otherwise it would have ended with the orange.
Yes. Yeah. It would have ended with the orange. But I really love the green kind of helped tone it down.
The green made the quilt for me.
It did.
I mean, I was feeling the same thing as you were showing me the clues. I loved the fabric, but I was just kind of like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, I'm not a big orange fan. And there's 2 oranges in there. There's like the orange, and then there's like a corally color. Yeah. I liked the corally color a little bit more, but all I could see was like the yellow and then the orange, like the pumpkin orange. And so I wasn't feeling it. But when that green and that yellow came in, it made all the difference in the world.
It really, really did. So love this quilt. It's beautiful, and yeah, I'm already enjoying it. So.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I am so glad. And on the back of that, you want to just give them a little peekaboo at the back side.
Ooh, I love the turquoise.
It's a turquoise speckled.
It is.
It was a 108 from Ruby Star, and it's got that really satiny, smooth, soft, buttery feel. Yeah.
So soft.
Yep. I have been loving speckleds. The speckled 108s for wide backs, because there's just enough going on in the back to make it feel a little fun. So it's not like a solid, but it's also not a grunge,
right?
Which I feel like in my room has been overdone to death.
Sure.
So this is something new and exciting for me.
And the silkiness of them are just
well, all the 108s from Moda are like that. So I'm really excited. So
what do you got?
I have a quilt that I am calling the Chunky Stripe quilt. So this is a quilt that I pieced couple of weeks ago on a live stream. I bought some fat quarters, a curated fat quarter bundle from an online shop, and the shop owner sent me a half yard bundle instead, which I was very appreciative of. That was very nice of her. And she sent like a little gift down inside. She was like, "Thank you for supporting my small business." I was like, "Oh, you're welcome." So I had the fabric on my shelf for a while. I wasn't really sure what to do with it. And this was in a week where I was feeling a little underwhelmed and uninspired. And so I had decided that I was going to do something with those fabrics. Well, I saw a video clip of Natalia Bonner on Instagram, and she had taken almost like a Jelly Roll Race type of quilt. It was just strips of fabric, and she was using that to practice her free motion border designs in each strip. And I went, I can do that. And so I decided, all right, well, let me get some fabric that works together. And I just decided I'm overwhelmed with the idea of I had decision fatigue from work. And so I just grabbed off my shelf. I needed to have a project for a Friday night live stream. And I decided I was going to use that fabric and add some white in. And then after it was pieced, I would figure out a border. Well, the border fabric I actually had in my shelf, and it matches the middle stripe perfectly. So I put this together, and within a week I had this quilt quilted and bound and labeled, because I was so excited to do that same thing that Natalia Bonner had done, but using Pro Stitcher. And so this is my Chunky Stripe quilt. On the back of it, I do have some minky, because hello. And for those of you that are going to ask, because I feel like I get this question all the time, anytime I say I back with minky, I usually get, did you put batting in between? And the answer is yes. Yep. I put a lightweight batting. So it's just bamboo. I use bamboo for most everything. Although I just did buy a case of batting, and I got cotton this time because it was more economical. Okay. And if you're donating quilts, a lot of places want cotton only. So like the NICU at the Guild, they want cotton only. And so I was like, well, if I want to start doing NICU quilts, I have to adhere to those rules. So I saved myself a bit of money and chose cotton batting instead of the bamboo. Both wash up beautifully.
Yeah,
so
definitely. It's wonderful. I think it's serendipitous that the color in the middle bar was the same color as the fabric you already had on your shelf. It's a little different because it has some speckles in the border fabric and such, but I
only had a yard of that, by the way.
That's
just enough for the border. Yeah. Like that was it. Done. So, yeah. So I brought up Guild, and I know that's the topic of today's episode. You've got about 5 topics or so that we want to kind of get through over the next hour-ish that we're going to be hanging out. So why don't we kick off our discussion about guilds? Absolutely. This was your idea. So lead us down the primrose path. Is follow the yellow brick road. I don't know. Like, take it away, Ian.
Yeah. So we get questions, both you and I, on our YouTube channel quite frequently. People want to know about how do they find guilds? How do they find guilds? What should they expect? You know, kind of talking about guilds and finding those social SEW social groups that they can hang out with and, you know, get to know some people that are like-minded and they can hang out with or be a part of or whatever. So today we're going to talk about what it's like to be in a guild, what the expectations are. You've already run over that, so I'm not even going to run over it again. I don't know why. But anyways, so let's start off with the first thing of how to find a guild. Okay. That is like one of the biggest questions that I see on Facebook, on our YouTube channels. I'm in X location. How do I find a guild?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you the first thing that you're going to need to think about is that you may have to travel for your guild. The first place that I have gone to when I was looking for a guild is Google. Good old-fashioned Google. I also looked in Facebook groups where local sewists or quilters meet, and I would even ask at my local quilt shops, right? And just like, hey, is there a guild in the area? That type of thing. And I've actually seen people ask about guilds at like Joann's and stuff. So that's not an uncommon practice. Just understand that there may be a travel commitment for you, and just make sure that you are reconciling in your mind how far you are willing to travel for that.
Definitely, because it can be. When I was living in DFW, we had 8 plus
Wow.
guilds. There was actually a lot of guilds in the DFW area. Now, granted, DFW is a pretty large area. It takes, 45 minutes to get from downtown Fort Worth to downtown Dallas. So kind of covers a lot of land there. But, the more densely populated an area is, the more likely there's going to be a guild super close to you. You might have to drive, if you're outside of an urban area, you might have to drive a little bit in order to get to a guild. But usually there's some sort of social gathering, whether it's an official guild or maybe even just a group of people coming together to sew.
Sure.
There are places that you can find your guild, you can find your group, you can locate them, and Google is the best place to get started on that. I can't tell you how many times I've needed to find something. And I'll give you an example. So I'm new to the area.
Right.
And I want, I've never had to rebuild my social network. Like, this is the first time that I'm ever having to rebuild.
You don't need a social network. You have me. You don't need anyone else.
And instantly the door is just locked right there. No. But I'm looking for, I love spending time with you, but I also want to find my other friends.
You want to find your tribe.
Right, exactly. I want to find my tribe.
I should be a part of your tribe, not your tribe.
Absolutely. So, I've been like, oh, I don't know what to do. And I was talking to one of my friends, and he suggested, he's like, look to see if there's like an LGBT board game group. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that.
Right.
So what did I do? I went to Google, and sure enough, there were several in DC. There's several in Northern Virginia. So I have a starting point that I can start going down the list and being like, okay, let's check out this group. Let's, look at their website, look at their Facebook page, look at whatever, and kind of get a sense of who they are, and am I aligned with them, or, is that they're a great group, but maybe they're just not quite my group, you know? So that was the first place to go, and I got a lot of results. So definitely Google is your best friend.
Yeah. So once you found your group and you're ready to give them a chance, let's talk about what to expect.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So for me, when I showed up at my guild for the first time, I didn't know what to expect. So I'll tell you what ended up happening in case you're looking for one. I found out that the first meeting or two, you actually get to attend just for free, just to see what the group is about, see if you make any connections, see if it's something that fits well with you. And then you are usually requested to pay annual dues, which for the guilds that I have been a part of are usually between $40 and $50-ish for the entire year. Now, for that price, what you get are whatever benefits the guild offers. So they usually will have monthly meetings where there's a guest speaker. I have been a part of guilds where that guest speaker is somebody internal, but also sometimes it is a more well-known name, like Karen Brown from Just Get It Done Quilts. She spoke at one of my guilds. You had talked about how Libs Elliott spoke at the Dallas Fort Worth Guild when you were very, very new. So, right. Like, it can be a very well-known name. It can be somebody who's up and coming. It could be somebody local to the guild who's not a celebrity, but still has a wealth of knowledge. A lot of guilds also may offer other avenues to be social with their members, like sit and sews, quilt bees, discounts for retreats that they're organizing. Some may put on quilt shows so you can have competitions. They may do charitable events where you can participate in different projects that are going to help feed the community or shelter the community, whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of things that could happen within the guild. I would tell you, as you're looking for that guild, understand not only how far are you willing to drive or commute to get there, but what do you want out of it? Are you just looking for other quilters? Or do you want other modern quilters, meaning you're attracted to those vibrant, bright colors and your favorite designers are really kind of more young and energetic? Or do you like a lot of the traditional colors and you're more aligned with that type of people? Not that you can't go along with both, because you can absolutely cross your beam. But sometimes you just want to be around your people, right? Like you want to see what they're working on with the same things that you also work on. So and if you're going into a modern group, you're probably going to get speakers that align more to that than you would if you were going to a traditional group. I will tell you, I joined a quilt guild, and for the first, I don't know how long it was, but it seemed like the first 6 months, every time I showed up on a meeting night, literally they had somebody talking about applique using Civil War fabrics, and I was just like, really? So that's my soapbox. I will step down now. Is there anything that I miss that you feel like people should keep in mind when they're joining, or what to expect?
So I think it's great because guilds allow for, it's usually in their bylaws, they allow for people to come and visit.
Yeah.
And get those first 1 or 2 meetings for free and be able to meet the people of the guild and see like what kind of topics. And a lot of times guilds will go over, hey, over the next few months, we're going to have this person, we're going to talk about this subject. We're going to, like, you really get a taste of what that guild is like and what and see if it aligns with what you're looking for.
Sure.
And I think it's really great because you also get to talk to the other guild members and start making those social connections and all that kind of stuff. I will say my experience is a little different because I'm a guy.
Yeah.
And walking into a quilt guild, it's funny because when I actually found out about the Fort Worth Modern Quilt Guild, I actually messaged them on Facebook because I'm like, hey, I'm a dude. Am I allowed to come to the meeting? Like, I didn't know anything at that time. So I was like, hey, is it okay? And they were very excited to have me and super welcoming to me. Hi, Fort Worth Modern. Miss y'all. But, they were super excited. And, I piqued a lot of interest being a guy.
Oh, my God.
In the guild.
You do that all the time.
I can't help it. I can't help it because this is a female-dominated industry, a female-dominated hobby. I'm kind of one of the outliers, which is okay. And I think I find it interesting that I usually am able to get people starting to talk. Like,
I think 1 or 2 things usually happen when you show up into a quilting space, not like QuiltCon, because I don't see it as much there because there's a larger male presence, right?
For sure.
But if you walk into a quilt guild or a local quilt show or a quilt shop, I see everybody that interacts with you usually does one of 2 things. They either want to make sure that you know that you're welcome, and so they go over the top, out of their way to make sure that they are addressing you and talking to you and making you feel welcome.
Great.
Right?
Don't get me wrong. That's great.
Or maybe one of 3 things. Or they dismiss you immediately and want nothing to do with you and want you to leave, or just assume that you're there because you're with a woman.
Right.
So one of those 3 things usually happens.
Yeah. It's funny. Thankfully, I have not really had much of the other 2 scenarios play out. I've mostly had like wanting to welcome me and say, hey, we love that you're here, all that kind of stuff. Although at a few quilt shops, not the local ones, but in my experience, I've been in a couple of quilt shops, and they've been like, "Oh, did your wife send you in? Oh, where's your wife? What does she need? How can I help?" And it's like, no, I'm here.
Didn't somebody assume that you were my husband?
Yeah,
a quilt.
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh, are you with your wife?" I mean, I don't remember what they said, but I remember I can still hear your voice in the back of my head. I'm a quilter too, and I was just like, that's got to be exhausting to be like, no, I'm a quilter too. Like every time, yeah.
Thankfully, it doesn't happen very often. It's like that experience was kind of a one-off for me, which is great. I love that because most of the time people are very welcoming and like they want to talk to me, they want to find out what's going on, all that kind of stuff. And they don't. And when I show up at a quilt store or quilt show or quilt guild, most people respond with like, "Oh, you're a quilt." Like they kind of know. But the YouTube channel helps for sure. It's nice. It's nice for that. So I haven't had very many like instances of that happening, but I'm in a male quilters group, Facebook group, and I like at least once every 6 months or so there will be a guy in there who's like, "Well, went to a quilt store and they assumed I was the husband." So it happens, but it's not, thankfully it's not. I haven't had that experience a lot.
Right.
A little bit, but not a lot. Most of the time, like I said, my Fort Worth Modern Quilt Guild was just so excited that I was there.
So let's take this back to the guild, right? What to expect.
Yeah.
Well, if you're a dude, there's probably not going to be a lot of dudes there.
Yeah.
If you're a woman, you're probably going to be able to walk in and blend in. So that's what you're going to want. You're probably going to expect is it's probably going to be a gathering of other women that are also quilters. So if you're a guy, expect to pique interest. And if you're a woman, you might get a couple of people say welcome and they'll leave you alone to figure it out on your own. So yeah,
it's kind of like a choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
Way, because,
well, it's funny because you don't get the opportunity to blend in.
Yeah.
I totally will walk into a guild. I walk into a quilt shop. Like when we were at Scrappy Apple today, I was totally flying under the radar. Nobody knew who I was until I started laughing and talking. Mm-hmm. And then somebody recognized my voice and they asked me, and I wasn't going to be like, "No, I don't know who you're talking." Obviously,
right.
Like that's stupid.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to fess up. But I don't think you'd ever be able to do that. Like, no,
I don't think I would. I don't think I would be able to do that. But...
You're obviously like,
well, especially being 6'2", like I'm like, because again, I look at the photo today that we took at the Scrappy Apple, and I'm like towering over everybody. And
you are.
It was funny.
Anyway, all right. So that's how to find one. That's what to expect. What was the third thing that we wanted to talk about?
Talking about like, I guess the best way to put it is, you get out of a quilt guild what you put in.
That's right.
Like it is a lot of times. It is a lot of them are nonprofits.
Yes.
And so a lot of them are volunteer, like their board members are all volunteers, their subcommittees are all volunteers. And so a lot of times you get what, oh goodness.
Sorry, I hope that didn't make the microphone jump.
You get out of a guild what you put into it. And so it's going into a quilt guild with, what do I want to get out of this experience? What do I want to learn? How do I want to interact with everybody?
Right.
So it's because a lot of times, again, they'll have a schedule of guests because that, having been on a board before, not poor, but like, it's a lot of work to try and schedule guests to come in, and especially dealing with budgets and all that kind of stuff, it can be a lot. But, going in, knowing how much time you have to volunteer and to work with the guild, because you and I, we both have 9 to 5s. We cannot spend all day unless we take a day off of work, if it's a weekday, to do something. So it's making sure to manage your expectations and your, how can I say it? Like your energy that you're putting into the guild as well, because it's a lot of making sure that you're not just the casual observer. Like,
so the takeaway here is you're going to want to make sure that you're managing your I can't say it. expectations. There we go. That's the word. So the takeaway here is you know how to find the guild. Once you find the guild, what do you expect out of it? Well, expect that a guild is a not-for-profit organization. They're going to be doing a lot of different things as much as they can, but they can only do what they have volunteers willing to do. And so just kind of keep in mind that you are going to be asked to do things. You are going to be asked to help serve because otherwise that guild won't exist. So your dollar bills don't make the guild always run. Your hours make the guild run. So I actually don't have the ability to serve in a guild as much as I would like. And I think that's probably part of the reason why I don't go to the meetings as much, because I know that I don't have the time commitment. However, I try to promote them. And when they have shows or other things, I will always sign up for those things. But I don't have the time to do all the other stuff. So I don't get out of it as much as I would like to, but maybe one day I'll be able to get a little bit more out of it. So just understand that if you're a dude, they're going to pull you out. If you're a woman, you're probably going to fly under the radar, but eventually, and maybe if you're a dude on day one, they'll probably ask you, but eventually they're going to ask you to step in and serve in some capacity.
Some way, even if it's just helping to set up the quilt show. Just even sometimes just setting up the meeting itself. Like, you know, it takes a village. It takes a village to do all the things. So it's important to know that but I find it very fulfilling to do the things. Like, I know that I don't have a lot of time commitment available, but I enjoy, like, for my guild in Fort Worth, I would usually help with the quilt show and give my time there. So it was very fulfilling for me to be able to work in our guild booth at the show and, you know, tell people about our guild and be like, hey, do you know about us? What do you want to come to a meeting? Come on, it's fun. Especially when I was president. It was fun. It was like, hey, I'm the president of the guild. Come see me. And people were like, oh, wait, what? Anyways. But so just managing expectations, thinking about what you want to get out of the guild. Think about, and again, it goes back a little bit to, is it a traditional guild or a modern guild? And with the Modern Quilt Guild, you get a lot of perks with the National Modern Quilt Guild that allow you to, you know, the website that gives you free patterns and lectures and stuff like that. And then QuiltCon and all the things. So there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of things to think about of what is your aesthetic. And, you know, it's not to say that you can't cross into other territory, and a lot of times it's fun to stretch our outside of our boxes by going to those meetings, but just make sure you know what you're getting into and all that. Now let's talk about, we've talked about guilds, we've talked about official guilds. There are not guilds everywhere.
That's right.
As much as I would love for every single city on this earth to have a guild, that's just impossible.
Right.
So sometimes there's not a guild.
And even if there is, there are people that have mobility challenges that would make it difficult for them to attend in-person guilds. So there are guilds that, although they are traditional and meet in person, they have virtual options, which is probably taking you to the next topic that you want to talk about. Are those online only options?
Yeah, definitely. There are, like you said, there are guilds that have an online option. Kevin Branch Quilters, for instance, has a virtual option where they have their meetings available on Zoom for people to Zoom in. And
that's the guild that I belong to out of Lake Ridge, Virginia. Ian does as well. And for those of you that are like, who's Kevin Branch Quilters? Hi.
Hi, ladies. So they do have a virtual option, which is great because I'm always for accessibility and trying to make sure to reach out as far as possible. That was one of the things that I tried to work on in Fort Worth, and it's not easy. Like, I know, to be completely honest, it is not easy having worked in the guild and tried to make that happen. But I think it's super awesome when guilds do that and are able to do that. But sometimes you don't have a guild that is in your area that you can't get to, or there's not a guild in your area. And so what do? There's so many options for virtual guilds.
And not even virtual guilds, right? Like social circles.
Yeah.
That's what you talked about in the beginning.
Yep.
there is a desire, I think, amongst quilters to be among other like-minded individuals, right? It makes it easier to break the ice and feel like you're part of a community if you go in with a common thread already in place. And if you both know that you like to quilt, you both know that you like to play with fabric, that's an easy icebreaker. So I think one of I always say that there's always a silver lining to everything. Even if you have to shovel a pile of manure to get to it, it's still there. And one of the silver linings that I feel like we got out of COVID is the increased functionality to meet people virtually, right? If you think to where we were in 2019, yes, we had things like Skype and Zoom and maybe even Discord to some level, but they weren't what they are today. And now you have Zoom and you've got FaceTime and you've got Facebook Messenger and you've got all of these things which have allowed us as a quilting community to think of new and creative ways to connect with others. So for me personally, what I have seen in my community is I've established a VIP membership program on my website that allows you to get any pattern that I create for free. You get to download it for free. But then in addition to that, once a month, we do a VIP Zoom, and every third month or every fourth month, so every 3 months or every whatever it is, once a quarter, there is a Saturday to Sunday Zoom. So it's almost like a 36-hour type of thing. And I also extend that over to folks that are paying for the perks for my channel for my Sewbecca channel on YouTube. It's not, I try to stay away from the term membership because I think those two things could really confuse one another. But the takeaway here is both of those programs, the YouTube Perks program and the VIP plan on my website, both allow you to access a monthly Zoom where you get to meet other quilters and you get to sew with them. Sometimes you might be able to make it every single month. Sometimes things come up. You can't always be there, but there's always a group of quilters on that Zoom that are there not to be entertained by me, but to meet you and talk to each of you. They want to talk about quilting. They want to share their projects. They want to be inspired by what you're working on. So I think that's really great. I've seen a number of other quilters, some have YouTube channels, some don't, do the same thing. They're starting to set up their own community that has a virtual option. So shout out to Sean from The Guy Who Sews. He has officially declared it a guild. I don't know if there's a registration or anything that he has to do for this, but he has a Discord server and he has a group of folks there and they meet once a month on Discord. It's open all the time. They have all these things and it is completely free. He doesn't charge anything for it because the Discord server is free. He's not trying to make any money. And they're actually going to try to do a virtual quilt show, which I thought was amazing. So like, while he might not be able to do all the same things that a traditional guild does, maybe over time he can. It is certainly something that he is striving to do, and it's something that you can do from your home without having to pack everything up and go. So
I think you talked about COVID, and I think that is a silver lining out of COVID.
Oh, 100%.
Because during COVID, I joined a virtual guild. I found out about a virtual guild through a friend of mine and was like, yeah, this is the time that we all were at home. We couldn't hang out, all that kind of stuff, and we needed that social interaction.
Right.
And so several of the modern quilters got together and like, well, let's just do a Zoom each month. Let's hang out on Zoom and we'll treat it like an actual guild. And then in 2 or 3 weeks, when COVID's over, we'll go back to
2 or 3 weeks. Oh,
we were so naive. But anyways, but yeah, so it was great to be a part of that guild, and it's actually still running right now.
Good.
So
That's great.
It's great that there's an opportunity for us all to meet and hang out on Zoom, and we're all across the country, and it's great to be able to make those connections. And I've met some really great people on there and like started following them on Instagram, and then when QuiltCon came back around, was actually able to meet them in person. So it was this really cool full circle moment of like, hey, I know that face.
Yeah.
And oh, hey, it actually has a body connected to it.
And as a content creator who has started building those communities, it's really exciting when you see people in the community that you have built meet each other.
Yeah.
And not that you want to interject yourself into everything, but it's when they become best friends and hit it off and they're doing the things and they're taking that forward and finding other people, it's almost like you're paying it forward, right? And I get really excited because I don't mean this to sound the way maybe it'll come out, but it's not about me, right? When I'm making those Zooms, when you're joining in the Zooms, that is not my time to entertain you. You can sew with me. I'm there. I will talk with you, but this is really your time to talk to one another, right? Like this is you. We are all there as quilters. If you want to be entertained by me, go watch the video on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, and that's why you offer in your VIP sew days
the breakout rooms.
You offer breakout rooms where people are able to, like, it's not just a room of 23 people all talking over each other.
Right.
You can, if you want to go hang out with a smaller group, you can go take that smaller group to one of the breakout rooms and hang out for a little bit and then come back. Or, you know, you and I end up just bouncing around the rooms a lot and being like, hey, what's going on in here? And all that kind of stuff. So it's fun to be able to do that. And there's actually been a couple of people who have met in person because of your VIP group. And it's been great to hear about those friendships develop and everything. And they only knew about each other through the VIP group. So I think it's awesome that those connections can.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Really cool.
I always think about Matthew from Mixed Domestic, and they said they used to talk about all the time about how they were trying to build a community. And I remember that from years ago. And I feel the same way now. Like, I'm like, oh, no. That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a community. So yeah.
Pretty cool.
Shout out to Matthew.
So we've talked a lot about official groups. Official guilds, official groups and stuff like that. But there's definitely unofficial, and I don't want to say unofficial, but like non-guild sanctioned groups, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. And whether we mean, and what we mean by non-guild sanctioned, or what I mean by that is not that there's a registration form and you're on file with somebody. It's that you're not calling it a guild, or you're not calling it a program or a benefit. So Donna from Handmade by Ying does a similar program that I do, where you can join her channel Perks on YouTube, and she offers up things for that group to do. I think they're doing a sampler sew along for the next year. It's going to wrap in August. It's a block a week.
Oh my gosh.
I know, a block a week. I could not keep up. But there are a lot of women that are, well, I guess, and men, right? Because it's not just exclusive to one gender, but there's a lot of folks that are keeping up with it and they absolutely love it. But that is a perk that she's offering. She's also offering Zooms where you can come in and you can sit down and you can sew with her and others. And I think hers are all one room, so it's everybody in there. But some of the creators all do that. Karen Brown has the same option, right? But it's everybody all in one room. You can be in one room with me, but I also give you the option to have a quiet room because I need the sensory deprivation stuff. So anyway, all that to say, when we're talking about not guild sanctioned, what we're talking about are those groups of people that are starting to come together just to come together, not to form a big community, not to earn money, not to give you a benefit for a perk or a membership. So my group is not a part of that. I would not put Donna's group in that. I would not put Karen Brown's group in that. I wouldn't even put Sean's group in that, right? I'm thinking about, and it's the only name that kind of comes to mind, so I'm just going to toss it out there. Katie from Greenland Quilter. I know she sews on Zooms with people frequently, but it is like 3 or 4 people. And I don't know who those 3 or 4 people are, but she has formed friendships with them because of the Cotton Cuts Puzzle Mystery Quilt Zooms. And they have spun off and they spend time sewing virtually together. That's what I'm talking about when I say not guild sanctioned, unofficial.
Also, I would also consider this a lot of times quilt stores.
Oh,
that
yeah.
have those. You can, like, I know Boxcar Quilts in Denton, Texas. Hi, Boxcar. They
Ian,
do-
always trying to get the sponsorship.
always. They do what they call, I think it's called sit and sews.
Oh, yeah.
Like $5, and they have a huge warehouse. They moved into this like huge warehouse setup. Leo and I actually went to go check them out because he had never been to Boxcar.
No, shout out to Leo.
Hi, Leo. Hi. He had never been to Boxcar Quilts before, and so he's like, "Hey, let's go." And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And they were like, "Oh, hey, you can go check out the studio next door." And we walked in, and I was expecting, a classroom size, but it was like a whole warehouse size with pressing stations and design walls everywhere. Like, it was major setup. And so I think that's a really great place because they can hold a lot of people. And from what I've seen on social media, they're very popular. Like, a lot of people, I mean, $5 to go in, you have power, you have pressing, you have everything that you need at your fingertips, and you get to spend the whole day sewing. Like, that would be great.
Yep.
So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for, and the Quilter Studio also offers something similar to that as well.
They have a open sew. They call it open sew. I think it's one day a week, but it might be one day a month. I can't remember. Where they have a small classroom that can accommodate maybe 10 or so folks at the back of their store. And so during that open sew time, you are welcome to come in. They have a cutting table, but you have to bring your own tools, your own machine. They have a table for you to put your machine on and an outlet. And you can sit there and sew just with other like-minded quilters who you may or may not know. I think it's interesting how when we started talking about non-traditional guilds or organizations or gatherings, I went to the virtual option right away, and you started talking about the in-person option. I don't have a lot of time. I would like to do the in-person get-togethers like that. But that is a commitment for me because I'd have to pack everything up, and then I have to get in the car and I have to drive there and then unpack everything and then pack it all back up and come back here. And so in my head, the easiest thing to do is the virtual option because all I got to do is click on the button and I'm right there. I didn't have to pack anything. I didn't have to go anywhere. I'm still here if my daughter needs me. I can let the dogs out, and I can even multitask, right? Like if I decide I want to work on the long arm while I'm hanging out with folks, I can put my headset on and I can go over to the long arm and monitor it and plot out some designs and let it stitch out. I can't take that long arm with me. That can't go to an open sew.
Sure it could.
But you get the point, right? Yeah. Like I think for the in-person stuff, which is a good segue. So I don't know if this is where you want to go, if there's anything else you want to add to those unofficials. I would say for the in-person gatherings, I would save those for retreats.
Very true. Very, very true. Yeah. Retreats are a lot of fun, and there's a lot. Well, I say that.
And you've never been.
Yeah. Never been on a retreat. But from what I hear,
I have a feeling your inbox is going to be overwhelmed with tons of invitations.
I know. I'm going to
come to my retreat.
Right, exactly. This episode's going to go out, and the next morning I'm going to wake up to 100 emails. Anyways.
He's willing to be sponsored.
Right. Retreats, though, are a great way to, and there's different ways to set up retreats because some guilds set up a retreat just for them, so
right?
Just members of the guild that that attend. There are other times that I know Fort Worth sometimes had trouble getting the number of required people that a retreat needed. Like a lot of times retreats have a certain number of people that have to go in order to host, or they want a certain number basically.
Right.
Sometimes that doesn't always happen. And so the retreat center they wouldn't cancel it. They wouldn't be like, no, you can't come. But they would say, hey, we are going to open this up to other people, like the public. We're going to open this up to the public and have people sign up. And so it's a great way to meet people. If it's just your guild, it's a great way to meet people there. But also sometimes you get like-minded people who come in that aren't a part of the guild, and it is a great way to make connection and make new friends through maybe an avenue that you wouldn't have normally met that person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally makes sense. And I don't think retreats are limited to just guilds.
No, they're not.
So I think there's a few types of guilds out, or a few types of retreats out there.
Yeah.
I think the first one option is the one that your guild is organizing. This is going to be cost effective. The guild isn't looking to make a lot of money off of it. They're probably going to try to pocket some money to help their bottom line, right? You got to make money somewhere, but they're going to pass most of the savings over to you. And it's going to be a retreat that is usually within, if you belong to that guild and is a local traditional guild, it's going to be a retreat center that's within a couple hours of your home. So just far enough away to feel like you went somewhere, but not so far that you had to take a whole day to get there, right? So like Cabin Branch Quilters, one of the retreats that they do is in Massanutten Springs, which is down by Harrisonburg, so about 2 hours away from here. So just enough that you feel like you went somewhere, but not so far that you feel like it took you forever to get there.
Right, for sure.
The second category of retreats that I would classify would be those that I would consider to be for profit. And this falls into either for profit in that it is being sold to you and the person hosting, organizing it is pocketing money in some way, somehow that is what, like, their job is to organize and plan the retreat. It is an event. They are putting this on for you for a fee. And those are going to be a bit more costly, but you're usually going to get something bigger out of that. So I'm thinking about I know I've talked to Brody and T Income about their retreats, and I know they don't make a ton of money off of those retreats. However, they have figured out a business model that works for them. They host it in their store. So what better place to have a quilting retreat than in a quilt shop, right? Like anything you need is right there. So that's going to help them drive sales as well. So that's another for-profit retreat. I know lots of entrepreneurs out there are trying to organize their own quilt retreats. I think Stitch in Heaven does some as well. Those are all going to be a little bit more pricey because you are paying for a service, right? There is a service that is being provided. So you are paying for that. The third category of retreat that I would classify would be the ones that are organized by friends. And this is it's usually, not always, it is usually a retreat where a group of friends come together and they figure out how much it's going to cost to have a retreat center locked down to just them for a specific set of time, and they divide that cost up evenly, right? So if we were looking at a retreat center that costs like $3,000 for a weekend, which is approximately what you would see, right? For like a Thursday through a Sunday. And I'm trying to make the math easy. If we had 6 people in there, we would break that up $500 a piece, and that would get you your room and board and your sewing for 5 nights, and then you have to figure out the food and stuff, of course. But that's the third option, and that is the retreat that I attend in July in Alabama every single year. I got to tell you, this is what I would call a private retreat, right? Like, it is not open for people to sign up. It is a closed group of friends. And we all know each other. We go and the only way you get into this is by invitation if a spot ever comes up. And like, you have to be, it's a whole thing. I absolutely love this retreat. But it is so affordable because it is literally just the cost divided.
Yeah.
So to give you an example, we check in on Thursday afternoon and then check out Thursday morning the next week.
Oh, wow.
Excuse me.
I didn't realize that it was like...
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's straight up a week. It didn't used to always be that way. Yeah. We are the only group that goes to this retreat center that gets to have it for a whole week. Everybody else has to be, I think it's like Monday through Thursday or Thursday through Sunday, right? Like something like that.
Yeah.
because then she takes the Sunday off because you're checked out on Sunday. Anyway, we're the only group that she allows to have basically 2 sessions back to back because she loves us so much. I love it.
Awesome.
So we go in, and for that Thursday through Thursday when we check in, dinner is served. Thursday when we check out, we get breakfast only. Sunday, we fend for ourselves. I think there's a breakfast available, but we have to fend for ourselves for dinner. So 3 meals. But then on Friday, Saturday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we get breakfast and dinner. And the host that owns the facility caters the food. She provides beverages and snacks. So for basically Thursday through Thursday, we get all of our meals except for our dinner on Sunday that we have to figure out ourselves. But that's our opportunity as a group to go out and have a dinner on our, like, as a group together. So we pay for that one meal. That one meal. The whole week is about $600.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Around, right? Like, I don't want to be like, oh, this is the exact price, because things can happen.
For sure.
But yeah, like,
that's really economical. And I feel like, and especially
when you compare that to like what you would get from Stitch in Heaven or a quilt cruise, I think Erin from Love So Modern had just taught on a quilt cruise, but that price, I want to say, was like $2,000. Like, not that it wasn't worth, I mean, you went on a cruise.
That does sound pretty enticing.
Yeah. I feel like I just went on a complete tangent.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
I am so sorry, but that's, I feel like the quilt retreats all fall into one of those categories.
Yeah.
I will say I don't feel like I have ever been to a for-profit retreat.
Right.
I have gone to Donna from Handmade by Ying. She gets a group of friends together and rents out a place called the Nut House in Walnutport, Pennsylvania. And every June, she takes her group of friends there. And I've been to 2 of them now, I think. Or is it 3? I don't know. But I feel like that's kind of in the friends group, right?
Yeah,
right? Because she's figuring out what it takes to cover the meals and the house and the whatever, and dividing the price up.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Alabama retreat. I have never been to a So Yeah retreat or a Stitch in Heaven. I've never been to a paid for retreat. I want to go, but I also have so many other things to do. So
it always seems like the So Yeah one comes up at just the wrong time of year.
And I know, and every year I'm like, I want to go. I want to go. And then I can't. I feel like their cadence is now October and February. Yep. And that doesn't work for my schedule,
right? Because
October is my daughter's birthday, it's my stepdaughter's birthday, and it's my sister-in-law's birthday. So I've got all of those. Plus I work even though I work in IT, I'm in finance, and that's usually the start of a fiscal year. So taking time off in October is hard. And then if New Kids on the Block have a cruise, I have been going on the cruise with my New Kids on the Block friend, Karen. And so it's just like all of these things happen in October. So that's out. Yeah. And then I look in February. Well, February is my birthday. Yep. And February is QuiltCon.
It is. It is QuiltCon.
And February is my husband's birthday.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd have to plan it. Like I would literally have to plan it like 2 years in advance. And they only offer sign up 6 months out. But you know what? That business model is working for them because they sell out every single time with only 6 months notice.
Yeah. And I've
100%.
And everybody that I have heard who goes,
it looks like a blast.
They say how much fun it is.
It looks like a blast.
Yeah. It's so exciting. So I'm so happy.
Sorry. Shout out to So Yeah. Y'all are knocking it out of the park with those retreats. Yeah. They look like a blast. One day in 2035, I will get to one. It's on my bucket list. Well, see, and the other problem with that, though, for me, is while there is definitely value for that retreat, right? I would have to pay for the hotel and the package. And then I also have to cover the flight to get out to Vegas. That takes the price of the retreat and makes it out of my budget.
Sure. Absolutely. It's not just a short little jump over to Vegas.
From completely opposite side of the coast. Hey, wait a minute. How about So Yeah, you open a store on the East Coast and you start doing retreats out here. I'm just saying.
Yep.
Anyway.
So there's a lot of different opportunities, and like we were saying, a lot of times the quilting retreats they'll have options where you can, no, it's not necessarily like you could just call them and be like, hey, I want this. Like, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say is they'll have opportunities for people who are not connected in a guild or not connected as friends, and they'll be able to come together and they'll open up spots for people to sign up for. And
so there is a place, I love the Elm Creek Quilts series of books. Have you read those?
No, I haven't.
Oh, they're so good. I spoiler alert, I didn't read them. I listened to them, and I'm sure somebody out there is like, that means you didn't really read it. I know the story. So, hold on one second. Okay, so I was talking about the Elm Creek Quilts books before my daughter started doing the Mervyn's open on the door.
Your daughter and your sister.
Oh my gosh.
Both one and the same.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so Zoe needed her backpack that she came home for Thanksgiving weekend, walked through the studio and literally plopped the backpack Tuesday after school where it has sat
the entire time
until the moment we started recording the podcast. She decided she needed her backpack.
Of course.
So
always
the Elm Creek Quilt series.
Yeah.
Elm Creek Quilts. Gosh, I can't talk today. I feel like I need to do the stroke test fast. Like
no.
I don't smell burning toast, so I think I'm okay.
Okay, good.
I'm sorry. Oh man, if that doesn't go in the outtakes, I don't know what will.
It's probably staying in the episode.
Yeah, moving on. So the Elm Creek Quilts books, I absolutely love them.
Yeah.
And the whole premise, the whole plot, there's a whole ton of these books, is basically this lady who grew up in a mansion in Pennsylvania, and when she turned 20 something years old, there was a falling out with her and her sister, and she moved out. But when her sister died, the manor was left to her. And so she goes back home, and she decides to convert her childhood home, which is this glorious estate, into a retreat center.
Oh.
And she offered, like, you have all these old time bedrooms. Think of like the bedrooms from like Bridgerton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. Like, that's what I picture when I'm reading these books. And so you come, you check in, you get your own suite with the fireplace and everything. And then you come down and you do classes during the day, and they talk about all the things. And I want to go to Elm Creek. I know it's a fictional place, but I want to go to Elm Creek.
I love it.
Well, there is a place in Pennsylvania, and the name eludes me right now, but there is a place, and they actually advertise their retreats to be the closest thing that you'll get to Elm Creek Quilts retreat. You don't take a group, you don't rent it out. They host, I think, 2 quilt retreats a year, and they're just weekend retreat.
Right.
And you book the room and your spot in the workshop. And by the way, when we're talking about retreats, keep in mind that sometimes retreats are project-based and sometimes they are not. This one is project-based. So you're going to go and you're going to work on the project that retreat is designated for, and you're going to pick out your suite, your room, and then you drive up to Pennsylvania and you do your thing. I want to go, dude. Cool. Like, it's been on my bucket list to go for probably about 3 or 4 years. So
cool.
Yeah.
That'll happen
anyway
in 2039.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is. Maybe it'll happen before. So yeah, because I don't have to buy a plane ticket.
Right. For sure.
But the other thing with the because I don't want anybody to be like, oh, Becca was dissing. So yeah, I wasn't. Like, I'm jealous that y'all have got to go. Theirs are also, I think, Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday. So they're another good chunk of time. If you think about, like, if we were to fly, that would be an all day thing. So we could fly in on Sunday, and then Monday would be blah 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 blah. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
I originally started my YouTube channel as a paper crafting channel.
Right.
And usually retreats are called crops.
Oh.
They're not called, a lot of times they're like, they can call them retreats, but they're also crops as well. So this idea of a retreat is not limited to just quilters.
It's not.
Crafters as well. And it was funny because I was this was like daydreaming kind of thing, because I used to go out to Fort Davis in West Texas every year with my family. That was our family vacation. We'd go to the Prude Dude Ranch, and do the star party, which was astronomy observing and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, love West Texas, love Fort Davis, really great small sleepy town. And for the fun of it, I went on to like Zillow and I like looked at property, and I found this house out there that had a huge open attic. They had several beds like up there, and then there was a glass walled studio out in the backyard.
Oh.
And it was like, I was like, that would be a really fun place to have a crop at.
Yeah.
And, I still think back every now and again to that house, and I'm like, man, wouldn't that be a fun, like, retreat center where
that is on my bucket list.
Yeah.
I would like in retirement, and this is like such a far-fetched idea. I don't know if it would ever really happen, but it's a dream that Jason and I actually both have, that we could buy a big home, and turn it into an Airbnb that is basically set up for crafters to come and do their thing, whether it's quilting, scrapbooking, knitting, whatever it is. But all of the supplies, all of the equipment could be there supplied for you. So you don't have to lug a sewing machine cross country. You just come, right? There's a lot that would go into that. And the other part of that is I could also use it to teach and to host workshops, right?
Definitely.
Whether they're led by me or somebody else, I really would love to do that. But that also involves a bit of capital up front to be able to buy the facility, right? So, and then the time to do all the things. And I just don't have the time. Just because I want to do something or I could pull it off doesn't mean I should. So, but yeah, that's the same thing. I do remember when we were looking for this house, when we were shopping for our home, there was a house that we both loved, and we put an offer in, and it was not accepted. We put an offer in on day one. The house was listed on a Friday, or something like that. Maybe it wasn't day one, but it was opening weekend. We put an offer in.
Yeah.
And we did not put it in at list because what she was asking for was above what the comps would lead. But she had overbuilt the house, right? Like, 'cause she'd built a lot on, and she was very emotionally attached to the home. But she was a quilter. So when you walked into this home, it's basically the same house that we have now, except if you picture taking the basement, the main level, like where the dining room is, and our upstairs bedroom and ensuite, and pushing it out to build a 600 square foot addition on all 3 levels. That's what she did. So she had upstairs, she had 5 big bedrooms. In the basement, she had another 1 bedroom, but there were 2 rooms that could have been used as bedrooms as well. And then she had what you would call like a Florida room or a sunroom that was all glass windows. That was set up to be a sewing room. She had sewing tables in there, a couch in there, everything. The main level, she had the addition that was built out. You could tell that people used that as like, you could tell it was a common space.
Yeah.
It wasn't her living room, because just from the way it was furnished, you could tell. There was like a picnic table in there, and then just like it wasn't her living room. You could tell it wasn't her living room, but it was gathering space for something. And then all of the bedrooms upstairs, her bedroom had her bed in it, but every other bedroom had like 2 beds in it. I was like, this woman's trying to build a retreat center. Like, this is what this is.
Yeah.
That's immediately what I saw.
Yeah.
I have had the chance to meet her in person because she was a member of Cabin Branch Quilters.
Oh.
Yeah. So I've met her, and she knows who I am. She knows that we were the ones that put our offer in on the house, all of the things. We've had those conversations. But I was right.
Yeah.
I was right. During the pandemic, they couldn't meet in person, and she was hungry for that relationship with her quilting friends. So she turned some of those rooms into spots for quilters to gather.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Kind of like actually what I've done here, right? Like I can't have 100 people in here, but I could have 3 people in here working comfortably.
100 people. I don't think we won't.
No,
It's like
but
we
you
might
could
just
have.
stack people on top of each other.
I mean, I have 2 working stations,
you do.
right? And then I've got the long arm in this area over here. So I feel like as long as one of the people is just sitting and conversing or working on a hand project, I could have 4 people in here
Oh,
working.
yeah, I definitely.
One would have to be at the long arm, 2 workstations, and then a hand work. But I feel lucky enough that I can host other quilters in my space. So if I want to sew with somebody in person, I can. But the virtual options are out there as well. Man, we have tangented so hard on the
out
retreats.
to like Jupiter or Uranus at this point. So
Uranus.
Uranus.
You are an anus.
You're And on that note, I think we should wrap it up here and bring this to a head that says
Uranus.
Oh my goodness.
Wait. Before we end,
Yeah.
there's another funny story.
No.
So
I'm scared. Where is this
no,
going?
it's completely G-rated.
Okay.
So when I lived in Michigan, whenever we heard about the river between DC and Virginia, Potomac, what do you call that?
The Potomac.
Okay, great. Great. Keep that in mind.
Okay.
We had just moved to the area and we were going to see a movie at a Regal Cinema in a strip mall called, what was that word?
Potomac.
Yard.
Okay.
Okay, that's the name of the strip mall.
Okay.
I was looking for where we needed to turn. And Jason was like, where are we supposed to be going? I was like, right up there. And he was like, where? And so I was like, up there, the Potomac. I didn't know how to pronounce it. Like in my head, I thought it was Potomac.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had always been taught that it was Potomac.
Yeah.
So it's Potomac. I have now since learned. So, if you're here and my husband alludes to Potomac.
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
So Uranus, Potomac, whatever.
Potato.
Yeah, whatever.
Tomato.
All right, wrap us up, Ian.
On that note, thank you guys so much for watching and or listening to this episode of Sew Off Kilter Podcast. We want to hear from you. What is your experience in a guild? What is your experience trying to find a guild? Let us know down in the comments of this video. We want to hear from you, of course, as always. And if you have subjects that you want us to talk about here on the podcast, you
like
can go
Potomac. Or a buttload of quilts.
Or I don't know what else. There's stuff you want us to talk about, head over to sewbecca.com. She has a form on her website that you can fill out and give us suggestions.
We need to get you a website too.
I know at some point we'll get there, but you can head over to sewbecca.com, fill out that form, let us know what you want to hear, and we may not get to it immediately, but we do read all of them and try to figure out how we can incorporate them into our podcast. And Becca, guess what? This podcast is finished.
And finished is better than perfect.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for listening and or watching, and see you next time.
Bye, friends.
Bye, everyone.
That's the first time we did the sign off the right way. Yeah. It's finished. And finished is better than perfect.
Yeah.
I like that. That was good.